Says the broadcast is already live. Well, hello, and if you would please write something in the chat. Uh, this is strange to me. I'm going to hit refresh. Right. Well, it looks like we're about 1 minute into the show, and we'll start here. Let me start TikTok a recording for this. Hello. We're talking about the federal court ruled that water fluoridation poses an unreasonable risk to children. This story is by Stuart Cooper. It's published on the Fluoride Action Network website at fluoridealert.org. Now let's scroll down a little bit. The ruling requires the EPA to take regulatory action to eliminate the risk in a decision that could end the use of water fluoridation chemicals throughout the U.S. After a precedent-setting 7-year legal battle in federal court, an historic ruling by the United States District Court of the Northern District of California has ordered the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, to take regulatory action to eliminate the unreasonable risk to the health of children posed by the practice of water fluoridation. The verdict is a significant loss for the EPA and the promoters of fluoridation, like the American Dental Association and the U.S. Centers for Disease Control, because the court found that their claims of safety made over 75 years were, in fact, not supported by evidence. Senior Judge Edward Chen wrote, "The court finds that fluoridation of water at 0.7 milligrams per liter, the level presently considered optimal in the United States, poses an unreasonable risk of reduced IQ in children. The court finds there is an unreasonable risk of such injury, a risk sufficient to require the EPA to engage with a regulatory response." In all, there is substantially and scientifically credible evidence establishing that fluoride poses a risk to human health. It is associated with a reduction in the IQ of children and is hazardous at doses that are far too close to fluoride levels in the drinking water of the United States. Reduced IQ poses serious harm. Studies have linked IQ decrements of even 1 or 2 points, e.g., reduced educational attainment, employment status, productivity, and earned wages. The ruling did not specify exactly what measures must be adopted by the EPA, but under the Toxic Substances Control Act, TSCA, once the court rules that a chemical poses an unreasonable risk, the EPA is obligated by law to restrict or eliminate the risk. Judge Chen described a range of options for regulating fluoridation, including banning it, but he warned one thing the EPA cannot do, however, in the face of this court's finding, is to ignore that risk. And we have a link to the full reading. Let me check the chat. I want to keep an eye out. Right. Very good. You're watching Joe Baker's Remedy Report, a show about bringing harmony to the world through economic innovations, health tips, and increased awareness. It's brought to you by forgivenesscapital.com, where we champion the infinite worth of every human being. Here are some notable excerpts from the ruling. Page 3, there is little dispute in this suit as to whether fluoride poses a hazard to human health. Indeed, EPA's own expert agrees that fluoride is hazardous at some level of exposure, and ample evidence establishes that a mother's exposure to fluoride during pregnancy is associated with IQ decrements in her offspring. Page 5. The pooled benchmark dose analysis concluded that a 1 point drop in IQ of a child is to be expected for each 0.28 micrograms per liter of fluoride in a pregnant woman's urine. This is highly concerning because maternal urinary fluoride levels for pregnant mothers in the United States range from 0.8 micrograms per liter at the median and 1.89 micrograms per liter, depending on the degree of exposure. Not only is there an insufficient margin between the hazard level and these exposure levels, for many, the exposure levels exceed the hazard level of 0.28 micrograms per liter. Page 5. Even if the toxicology determined hazard level of 0.28 micrograms per liter were deemed insufficiently substantiated, evidence in the record still establishes with little doubt that fluoridated drinking water presents a risk of injury to health. Page 6. The EPA's default margin of error requires a factor of 10 between the hazard level and exposure level due to variability in human sensitivities. And that number should be changed. That number should be 100. Particularly, we'll get into that at some other point. Ask me about the PGP inhibition effects and how ivermectin gets into that. And there's a gene that makes certain people 100 times more susceptible. So that factor of 10 might need to be 100 in some cases. An exposure level due to variability in human sensitivities. Here, an even greater margin, 100x, is owed because the methodology which yields the 4 micrograms per liter hazard level uses the lowest observed adverse effect level, LOEL. This methodology adds an additional level of uncertainty, and hence the application of a 100x rather than a 10x margin. But even if only the default 10x margin is required, the safe level of fluoride exposure would be 0.4 micrograms per liter. 4 micrograms per liter hazard level divided by 10. I see. The optimal water fluoridation level in the United States of 0.7 micrograms per liter is nearly double that safe level of 0.4 micrograms per liter for pregnant women and their offspring. Page 77. The scientific literature in the record provides a high level of certainty that a hazard is present. Fluoride is associated with reduced IQ, intelligence quotient. There are uncertainties presented by the underlying data regarding the appropriate point of departure and exposure level to utilize in this risk evaluation. But those uncertainties do not undermine the finding of an unreasonable risk in every scenario utilizing any of the various possible points of departures, exposure levels, and metrics. A risk is present in view of the applicable uncertainty factors that apply. And I'll get into this a little bit and talk about how vitamin A causes dental problems as well, and that I'll bet none of these tests and none of the The studies that they probably went over in this court case touch on retinoic acid at all as a variable. All right, page 78. There is significant certainty in the data set regarding the association between fluoride and reduced IQ. Namely, there is a robust body of evidence finding a statistically significant adverse association between fluoride and IQ. A large majority of the 72 epidemiological studies assessed by let me put that post up on
Hey guys,
TikTok and start my own second post. Continuing, starting at page 78, there is a significant certainty in the data set regarding the association between fluoride and reduced IQ. Namely, there is a robust body of evidence finding a statistically significant adverse association between fluoride and IQ. A large majority of the 72 epidemiological studies assessed by the NTP monograph observed this relationship, including all but one of the 19 high-quality studies. See, paragraphs 34 to 36, and literature published after the NTP monograph cutoff date observed the same relationship. See, I think it's paragraph 37. And countervailing evidence for various reasons described previously are of little impact on this repeated and consistently observed association between fluoride and reduced IQ. See paragraph 39. Moreover, complete consistency amongst studies is not expected. See DKT docket number 414, February 9th, 2024, and there's a 0 after it. Trial TR at 1172:23-1173:6. Savitz. I'm sorry, that's a reference to a case number, I think. Notably, notwithstanding inherent difficulties in observing this association at lower levels, studies assessing such levels still observed a statistically significant relationship between fluoride and reduced IQ. See paragraph 42 through 44. Again, to put the breadth of evidence supporting this finding in perspective, the EPA has identified a low L based upon far less in other contexts. For instance, the EPA's risk evaluation of methylene, where's my mouse? Conducted pursuant to amended TSCA, the EPA used a low L for developmental neurotoxicity derived from the analysis of one study conducted upon mouse pups. Friedrichsen et al., 1992. See methylene risk evaluation at 262. Compare this with 6 water fluoride and 9 urinary fluoride high-quality epidemiological studies of human populations underlying perhaps the 4 micrograms per liter low L underlying the pod here. Docket number 431-2, trial EX period 68 at 39, 41, E-Table 4. The scientific literature in the record provides a high level of certainty that a hazard is present. Fluoride is associated with reduced IQ. The qualitative evidence is superior. Page 76. The size of the affected population is vast. Approximately 200 million Americans have fluoride intentionally added to their drinking water at a concentration of 0.7 micrograms per liter. See docket number 421 at 206-07, undisputed. Other Americans are indirectly exposed to fluoridation water through consumption of commercial beverages and food manufactured with fluoridated water. Page 76. Approximately 2 million pregnant women and over 300,000 exclusively formula-fed babies are exposed to fluoridated water. The number of pregnant women and formula-fed babies alone who are exposed to water fluoridation each year exceeds entire populations exposed to conditions of use for which EPA has found unreasonable risk. The EPA has found risks unreasonable where the population impacted was less than 500 people. The Fluoride Action Network's attorney, Michael Connick, said the court has done what EPA has long refused to do, applied EPA's risk assessment framework to fluoride. It's a historic decision, and as we'll await EPA's rulemaking proceeding, policymakers would be well advised to ask, should we really be adding a neurotoxicant to our drinking water? And I want to put this on the screen. Maybe it's a little too late. We'll just keep going here. Background. The lawsuit was brought under the Toxic Substances Control Act of 1976, TSCA, Toxic Substances Control Act, which allows citizens to petition the EPA to evaluate whether a chemical presents an unreasonable risk to public health and should be regulated. It also empowers citizen groups to challenge the EPA in court after denial of a petition. TSCA gives EPA the authority to prohibit the particular use of a chemical substance if it's found to present an unreasonable risk to the general public or susceptible subpopulations. FAN submitted a citizen's petition under Section 21 of TSCA to the EPA in November 2016, requesting a ban on additional fluoridation chemicals to water. When the EPA denied our petition, FAN filed suit in federal court in 2017, joined by consumer advocacy groups, Food and Water Watch, and Moms Against Fluoridation, and public health associations, the American Academy of Environmental Medicine, and the International Academy of Oral Medicine and Toxicology, as well as several individuals representing themselves and or their children, including Brenda and Co. Stademeyer and Christy Lavelle. After a 2-week bench trial held via Zoom in June 2020, the trial was placed in abeyance as the court awaited the finalization of the National Toxicology Program's NTP systemic review of fluoride neurotoxicity. However, in 2022, pressure from the pro-fluoridation interest groups led to NTP's report being blocked from the public release by top officials in the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. Plaintiffs submitted documents obtained via the Freedom of Information Act exposing this intervention to the court. This discovery led to a legal agreement forcing the report to be made and prompting Chen to rule that the trial should go forward using the draft report from the NTP. A second and final phase of the bench trial was held over several weeks during the winter of 2024, and just last month, the NTP finally published the first part of the report, finding a large body of evidence that fluoride exposure is consistently associated with lower IQ in children. An accompanying NTP meta-analysis is soon to be published. If you'll just bear with me. Every 10-minute interval, I have to start a new TikTok thing. Let me start this. We're reading about the fluoridation court case, a win for the Fluoride Action Network. Not going to. A second and final phase of the bench trial was held over several weeks during the winter of 2024. And just last month, the NTP finally published the first part of their report, finding a large body of evidence that fluoride exposure is consistently associated with lower IQs in children. An accompanying NTP meta-analysis is soon to be published in a peer-reviewed journal. Here's a link for a timeline of the lawsuit. I think it was about a 7-year ordeal. Continuing. This is the first time a citizen's petition has gone to trial, and it's the first time a citizen group has won at a trial against EPA under TSCA Section 21. Our case and our victory will undoubtedly create opportunities for citizen and environmental watchdog groups to use the same blueprint as FAN in the future to force the EPA to adequately regulate chemicals that pose an unreasonable risk to public health. This trial was also the first time citizen groups have successfully obtained a full objective review of the science on fluoridation in a courtroom with experts under oath under TSCA's provisions that create a level playing field between the citizen groups and the EPA defending a chemical. Under most statutes, when citizens sue a federal agency, the courts give deference to the views of the agency, but in this lawsuit, under a special provision of the TSCA, the court does not give deference to the EPA. Congress specifically added this level playing field because it recognized EPA can be too slow to address harmful chemical exposures. Initial media coverage, CBS News has the federal court rules against EPA in lawsuit over fluoride in water. Bloomberg Law says EPA must reduce fluoride's IA risks to children, court says. The story in The Defender, fluoride in water poses unreasonable risk to children, federal judge rules. Dr. Bykupsid, U.S. court, fluoride in water risky, must be addressed. CNN, fluoride in water poses enough risk to merit new EPA action, judge says. Reuters, EPA must address fluoridated water's risk to children's IQs. U.S. judge rules. The Hill. Judge orders EPA to address potential IQ impacts of fluoride in drinking water. Politico. Fluoride ruling pushes EPA for regulatory action. Associated Press and ABC News. Fluoride in drinking water poses enough risk to merit new EPA action, judge says. Next steps. The court has ordered the EPA to initiate a rulemaking proceeding to come up with a new regulation that will restrict or eliminate the risk posed by fluoridation chemicals to the developing brain. The only way to effectively do this is to end fluoridation. Communities are currently adding this neurotoxin to the public water supplies voluntarily. The harm is needlessly self-inflicted, but this also means the solution is simple. Ban the use of fluoridation chemicals. The EPA may appeal to the Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit, or they could take a few years to develop rules. In our view, attempts by the EPA to appeal or delay this ruling will only result in harm to hundreds of thousands of additional children, particularly those whose families are unable to afford expensive reverse osmosis or distillation filtration of their tap water. We urge everyone reading this bulletin to share it along with the ruling itself with your local media outlets, decision makers, neighbors, and state legislators. Let's see. What else do we have here? Policymakers at the local and state level do not need to wait to take action. The federal government doesn't mandate fluoridation, and thus local and state decision makers can take action immediately. We have a very thorough decision made by the federal courts based on extensive evidence. The public didn't sign up to have chemical added to public drinking water that could adversely affect the brain. And while a cavity can easily be filled, damage to the brain is permanent, and the consequences are lifelong. There are no second chances when it comes to impaired brain development. I'm not so sure about that, but we'll see. That's my goal. And then this was written by Stuart Cooper. Sincerely, Stuart Cooper, Executive Director of the Fluoride Action Network. And then they have other newsletters and stuff. If you're interested in this topic, I would definitely go to fluoridealert.org, sign up on their mailing list. That's how I found out about this, the very day that they won the case. And I've been excited that, to learn that the case was even going on about, I don't know, maybe 3-5 months ago when they had final arguments. And then the judge was it took some time to make his decision. I'm trying to think here if I should go into the conspiratorial view on all of this. I guess that's why I'm here. That's why I'm doing this. It's because I believe that, for instance, there's a profit motive behind this. Fluoride is a very toxic substance. It is produced in the production of aluminum mining and refining. And, what is it? R.J. Reynolds is a big aluminum company. I imagine. I seem to remember that name on the aluminum foil wrapper box. And so rather than, spending money to dispose of it properly and safely, they'll sell it to your counties so that your counties can put it in your water supply. And this is a typical maneuver. They do this in the fish industry when they're fishing, and they create all this toxic waste that they can't just pour into the ocean or whatever. They have to find some way to get rid of it. So what do? They sell fish oil supplements, cod liver oil, also a toxic toxic waste byproduct of the fishing industry. So yeah, I mean, it's just a common business tactic by people who don't care to jump in and do those types of things. And it plays into the hands of dumbing down the population. It's easier to lead lead a population to their demise, or to their, not being, um, a strong country in the world, is to diminish their brain capacity. I do want to say that I think that a lot of what they're talking about in this case, a lot of the damage to the IQ is also from vitamin A, retinoic acid. There are some complexities about this that Dr. Garrett Smith, talks about on his Love Your Liver broadcast, on a channel on YouTube called Nutrition Detective. On there, he has over 165 live streams, videos. Let me get the next one going here. Let's see. All right, yeah, I'm talking about Dr. Garrett Smith of Nutrition Detective. .com, and that's his also his YouTube channel. And like I say, he has about 165 live streams where he has gone into copious amounts of evidence from from the abstracts written about medical trials, where he has linked vitamin A, which is retinoic acid, which is retinol, and a form of it is retinoic acid, to all manner of health problems. You know, cancer, psoriasis, eczema, autoimmune conditions, systemic inflammation, mental disorders like Alzheimer's, dementia, suicidal impulses. Because some of this vitamin A turns into isotretinoin in the body, or 13-cis retinoic acid. And this is well documented. This is very well documented. In the cases where people have sued the maker of Accutane, the drug, because there's like 70,000 lawsuits against that manufacturer. It causes all kinds of problems in the body, and this is a good window into what the problems with vitamin A are. You could suffer severe injury from eating something with vitamin A in it. And the reason that is not so much from the vitamin A in the food that you're eating. It's because the liver has accumulated a lifetime of vitamin A in the liver, and there's a certain point at which it can't hold onto it anymore, and it starts to cascade out, kind of like I describe it as an avalanche, and that's a simplistic view, just to give you an idea that there's highly concentrated reservoirs of vitamin A. Think of all the spicy foods that you've eaten over the years. Think of the color yellow in butter and in eggs. It's yellow because of the toxicity of vitamin A. And I've just never seen this before. It says there's an upload in progress on my screen. Sorry. Anyway, the liver holds this stuff for so long, and then and then vitamin E comes on top of that, and it inhibits the liver from repairing itself. The vitamin E inhibits the liver from repairing itself, and it makes the vitamin E makes the vitamin A impact itself 10 times more densely into the liver. So you get the pathways in the liver get destroyed from all this toxicity. So I'm glad to see this court case move forward in what I feel is a positive direction on the fluoride matter. Very happy. This is something I take great pride in. Yes, I see the comments. All right. So, yes, very good that it's working this way. We should be encouraged by this. We should take action on other things. I'd like to see the vitamin A activists get out there to also bring forward a lawsuit using this EPA thing. We have milk. Milk is being low-fat milk in the United States is enriched with vitamin A and vitamin D. Both are toxic substances. Flour in the United States is enriched. When they say enriched flour, think about they're putting toxins in it. And we're talking about forms of retinol. Think about retinol that goes on your skin to dissolve wrinkles. What do you think it does to your bones and to the flesh in your body? You can only imagine what something that can dissolve skin. It causes lesions on like the brain or anywhere, like lesions like it's what you see in a sunburn when the skin turns red. It's a chemical reaction happening, and the retinoic acid is burning the skin in a chemical way, and then you get this white flaky peelingness that comes off. This is the result of the toxicity of vitamin A. You do well to study this and to go in and start binge watching Dr. Smith's shows. Thank you for watching. I appreciate it very much. I'm going to jump off now, and we'll get back to your regularly scheduled programming. Thanks so much. Goodbye.